Hello guys, welcome back to CodeLens, where we venture into the uncharted waters in matters software. If you are new to the channel, feel at home and be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you'll be notified when I post a new video. Now let's get to the objective of our today's episode. And as you can see from the title, in this particular episode, we're going to have a look at how we can be able to set up our local infrastructure, which is going to facilitate us as we progress on building our ticketing application. As a prerequisite for this particular episode, I would recommend, if you haven't watched our episode 1 where we introduced the microservice concept, please click on the link on the top right of the screen so that you can have an understanding of how microservices work and what you should expect in this particular journey. All right, that being said, let's get straight now to the nitty-gritties of our today's episode. Now, as you can see, this particular episode is going to focus on setting up our local infrastructure, and as a prerequisite for this episode, be sure to install Docker on your machine. Be sure also to install Java SDK and also have your IDE ready. In this particular course or series, we are going to be using IntelliJ IDEA, but all the things that we are going to do should be able to be IDE agnostic and also platform agnostic. By this I mean all the commands that we are going to be running should be able to be executable on both the Mac, Linux and Windows. Now, if you want to go step by step as I also progress, I'm going to share a link to the starter template for this particular episode on the video description, where you can be able to clone this particular repo and be able to continue together. Now, one file of interest that I want to show you is the file called infrastructure compose.yaml. All right, now in here we have a variety of services which are basically Docker images which have been put into one compose file so that we can be able to have all the services that we are going to need under one platform. Now, before we start executing any particular command, let's have a look at what all these services do. Now, number one, as we mentioned on our episode 1, we are going to use console, which is going to help us to automate our network configurations. It's going to help us to discover services and also enable secure connectivity across any cloud or runtime. Number 2, as far as Vault is concerned, this is basically going to help us to secure, store and tightly control access to tokens, for example, password certificates, encryption keys, etc., etc. Basically anything in which our application is going to deem sensitive in nature, Vault is going to help us to secure them. Now, proceeding, we have our MongoDB, which is going to be our preferred NoSQL option. All right, as far as our message broker is concerned, we are going to be using RabbitMQ, which is going, of course, to be utilizing the AMQP protocol. All right, for caching, we are going to use Redis. We are going to see this more as we progress on the course. As far as our RDBMS is concerned, we are going to be using PostgreSQL as our preferred persistence. All right, now as far as MySQL is concerned, there is something that I want to show you guys as we proceed, whereby we can be able to utilize different databases for different applications. And in this particular case, we are going to use MySQL as our persistent storage for Keycloak. All right, and as we mentioned, Keycloak is basically an open source identity and access management for modern applications. All right, now to help us in building CQRS and event sourcing applications, we are going to utilize another open source solution or tool called HandsOn. We are going to see this more as we progress. All right, now that being said, that is just the general overview of our local infrastructure, which at the end of it all is what we are going to use to deploy to our various environments. All right, so all these configurations that you can see, they're pretty much basic stuff. For example, let us take an example of Keycloak. In here, we are just specifying we want to use a Docker image from Quay.io Keycloak, and this is the version that we want to use. In here we are exposing the internal port for Keycloak 8080, and then we are mapping it externally here on port 9990, which is going to map internally to port 8080 of Keycloak. All right, and in this case we are saying that it depends on MySQL. So where does it get this MySQL? So this MySQL is the name that we have used in here. All right, so in this case, if this was let's say MySQL 78, then in here we could have come and say depends on MySQL 78, for example. All right, now having said that, that is pretty much the structure of also all the other services that we are going to be using. Having said that, it is now time to start executing our commands and see if everything checks out as expected. Now in your terminal, go and let's perform an LL. Okay, we have our files that we are going to be using. We are going to dig more into this Grafana SQL Giga Prometheus file as we progress. All right, so for now your file of interest should be infrastructure compose.yaml. all right, having said that, let us do a docker compose docker compose -f to specify which file we want to execute. So infrastructure, then you're going to say app. As I mentioned, these commands are going to be platform agnostic, so also on Windows and Linux you should be able to execute the same commands and you should be able to be good to go. Now I'm going to press enter. Now in your machine it may take a minute or two. This is because the first time you are going to execute this particular commands, Docker is going to download all the images which are not on your machine. So in this case, if you do not have any of these images, it's going to download Keycloak, it's going to download HandsOn, it's going to download MySQL, Mongo, etc, etc. All right, so give it a minute or two. If you see it taking a bit longer, just give it a minute or two. Once it is complete, you can be able now to proceed, as I'm going to proceed now. Let's give it a moment. A number of services are actually running, so we can start actually on a top down kind of approach to see that everything is working as expected. Now let us start with console. We have said we are going to map console on port 8500. So let's see if our console application is up. So on a browser, I'm going to click localhost. We said 8500. All right, and there we are. So our console instance is running. So that's one check. Everything is running okay as far as console is concerned. Don't mind about this for now. All this is going to be explained in much more detail as we progress. The other service is Vault, which is running on port 8200. Let us see if it is up and running. So I'm going to say a localhost 8200. Let's see. I'm going to press enter. For some reason doesn't want to open. Let's have a look. This is port 8200. Let's give it another try. Maybe the service is not yet up, but let it continue. We see. All right, as it loads, we're going to proceed with other services. We are going to come back and check if Vault is up and running. So after Vault, we have our MongoDB. All right, so for MongoDB, I'm going to come here. Currently I'm using DataGrip. You can use whichever IDE that you want for Mongo. So in here, I'm going to come and right click properties. All right, so I'm going to test my connection. So as it tests, you're going to see that the host that I specified is localhost, and then the port is 27020, which is what we did set in here. All right, so we are mapping port 27020 on port to 7017 internally for Mongo. All right, let's have a look if it has connected successfully. It is still testing. I think our services are still starting up, or basically wiring up. So let's give it a minute or two. And as you can see, Vault is also in the process of should I say waking up, basically wiring up. All right, so let's also continue and see if other services are up and running. All right, so let's continue with our RabbitMQ on port 5672. So I'm going to come here and say localhost 56, actually should be 15672. All right, give it a moment. I think our services are still trying to wire up, so we are going to come back and see if everything checks out. So after RabbitMQ, we have Redis, we also have PostgreSQL, we also have MySQL and HandsOn. So for HandsOn, we are saying it's running on port 8024. Let's see, localhost 8024. All right, seems like our HandsOn is up and running. All right, so as you can see, this is the HandsOn server. So we are going again to deep dive on this as we continue, but it appears to be up and running and it is quite healthy. So our RabbitMQ is up and running, and as you can see from our configuration, we said that for RabbitMQ, we expose it on port 15672, and by default the username and password is usually guest. So guest, then login. Awesome, so we are good to go as far as now RabbitMQ is up. So at least our instance is running. Let's come back to the Vault instance, and as you can see, it's now up and running. And as you can see from our configuration, we did say that for Vault we are going to use a secret. So in this particular case, this Vault dev root token is what is being asked in this particular screen. So if you change this to be a different value, be sure to replace it in here. So I'm going to key in secret and click sign in. All right, we are in. So in here, our Vault instance is running as expected, which is now good thing. Which service haven't we looked at? We have Keycloak. This is another one. So Keycloak, we are saying is going to run on port 9990. Let's see if it is up and running. Localhost 9990. All right, so 9990, still Keycloak is still not up and running. Let's see, let's continue giving it a minute or two. Let me try and see if I can be able to find out. So as you can see, Keycloak exited with code 0. So you're going to find that there is a high chance that Keycloak was not able to wire up correctly. So let's try and have a look why that was the case. What I can actually do to simplify things is I'm going to come here under Keycloak. I'm going to change this port from 9990 to a different port. So I'm going to say maybe 9080. All right, so I'm going to first of all to bring down the whole local infrastructure. I've just pressed Ctrl+C. Give it a moment. All right, I'm going to do again docker compose up. Give it a moment. All right, it's going to take also a minute or two for our services to come back up and running. MySQL. Give it a moment.
A few moments later.
Yeah, so as you can see, now our keycloak instance is up and running. So I'm going to go right ahead and click on the administration console. I'm going to key in the credentials, admin, password. So if you're wondering where to get these particular credentials, go into the compose file. You will see that the keycloak user we've said is admin, and then the password is this password. All right, so these are the credentials which I'm also using in here. So I'm going to click sign in. So we're getting too many redirects, so I'm just going to open an incognito tab. Then we've said it is on 90 80. Again, administration console, admin, and then the password. All right, voila, so we are in. So we are able now to have access to our keycloak instance, and this at least brings us to an end as far as our setting up our local infrastructure and environment is concerned. Should you have faced any particular challenges while implementing this, be sure to shoot in the comment section and I'll be able to help you in one way or another. So I'll see you on the next one as we now start working on our ticketing application. Goodbye.